Crystal, congratulations. So happy for you. Texas came out the same week as Tennessee, and I was caught up with that. And then we got into the weekend, and I checked. Your name is not too rare, but then the combination and then the middle initial, I'm like, it's got to be Crystal. And then I sent that email, and I knew it was, of course. And then you said, yes, that's me. Yeah, congratulations. And I'm very happy for you. We start out with an introduction, ask about your background. You have that really interesting background in psychology. So do you mind sharing and talking about that a little?
A non-traditional law student, meaning the legal profession was my second career. So I started out as a school psychologist in Franklin, Tennessee, maybe 20 minutes away from the Nashville area. As a school psych, I was responsible for conducting evaluations to determine if a child had one of the 13 disabilities that the state identifies, such as autism, learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, things like that. In Tennessee, in addition to that, we're also responsible for behavior assessments. Every state is different. In Texas, they handle a little bit of behavior, but they tend to let the counselors take on more of that. In Tennessee, we are the go-to for everything academic and behavior. And so with that, sometimes parents complain for various reasons. They may not like the assessment that I completed on their child, or they may think that the team, meaning myself, the physical therapist, OT, special ed teacher, maybe didn't use the appropriate interventions when planning the child's education plan. And so when that happens, parents file what we call a due process complaint. And it's a step-by-step process. So typically the attorneys for the district would schedule a team meeting with us as well as the parents and their attorney. And we would essentially have a team meeting, try to resolve the issue. If we can't resolve the issue there, the next step would be mediation. And then, of course, if mediation doesn't help, then the next step would be trial. No one wants to do that. My first year on the job, week 3 on the job, we had a due process issue and I was freaking out, but yet I thought, this is cool. I've never seen attorneys in action before. That one was a very contentious case, so no one was smiling in the meeting other than myself. I had the opportunity to watch labor and employment lawyers in action. This was around 2015. I thought, this is cool. I remember growing up only watching Matlock or even Perry Mason, thinking that all lawyers went to trial or all lawyers handled criminal cases or family law cases. So that was the first time that I saw attorneys who did other things outside of what was portrayed on TV. And then I didn't really think much about it because I had a goal in my head. Work for 5 years with the district and then go and get my PhD later and hopefully work in private practice for a while. But every year I had a due process issue that wasn't typical for most school psychs. I think I was the only person on my team who had a due process issue every single year. And the cases, they each got progressively worse to the point where we couldn't resolve them in a team meeting. We had to go to mediation. So fast forward to 2018, we went to mediation for a family who had children that they found complaints about. We were at mediation for about 12 to 13 hours discussing 2 children. And it was there that I decided to go to law school because I just thought, wow, mediation is the coolest thing ever. I want to work in the area of special education law. This is what I want to do. So I started studying for the LSAT and 2 years later got accepted into law school. And then my dreams of becoming a special ed lawyer went away once I got my 1L grades back and I had big law offers. I summered for big law firms my 1L in a year. So the special ed dream is currently pushed to the back burner. But that's what initially motivated me to go to law school, was being a school psych in that district handling those due process cases.
So I guess I have 3 questions for you. The first was, whenever we had those procedural due process questions or even substantive due process in constitutional law, they were very germane to you, right? I bet you those were your favorite, I'd imagine.
Interesting. I never thought about it that way, but now that you say that, maybe that's why con law actually made sense to me. Con law and civil procedure made the most sense in law school. I was really good at civil procedure and I loved it. I couldn't figure out why, but now that you say that, maybe that's a connection. The procedural aspect of things, yeah.
At your law school, did they have some kind of organizations like child advocacy or something like that that you joined up?
I started out at Southern University in Louisiana. There were actually 2 other young ladies who were also school psychologists, but they were a part of the part-time program. I was in the full-time program, and the law school dean connected the 3 of us. So we forged a bond, and they did have an organization for students who were interested in education law. And I also served served on different committees at Southern, and they had one for educational programming at the law school. The three of us served on that. And so we basically just made recommendations to faculty and staff as far as how to make sure that students were really equipped with the tools that they needed to not only pass the bar, but even in class, things like that. Then I did so well my 1 year that my mentor urged me to transfer to a higher ranked school for various reasons. And I had different options, but I picked the University of Alabama because I'm from Alabama. They have a great bar passage rate, and it wasn't overly expensive tuition wise. When I transferred to Alabama, I was literally a part of everything. But we didn't necessarily have a education law organization at Alabama, but there was a professor who used to work for the Office of Civil Rights, OCR, I can't remember the formal title, but she specializes in education law, labor and employment, things like that. So I served as her teaching assistant, and then I also did an independent study my 3L year under her, where I just researched different topics under the area of special education law for that year. And then I also externed with the Office of Counsel, who handle a lot of issues for the university. So even though they didn't have a club or an organization per se, I made it work for me. I continued to network in that space.
So very cool. When we would do writing sessions together, I had told you that I had just met someone within the last couple of years, and I actually ran into her last week or the week before at a birthday party and said, we're going to do this podcast, you and I. And she said, I have to know more. She was very interested in knowing more about you because you two are the exact opposite, but the same in the sense that she came out of Hastings in California, San Francisco, and then she was an attorney for the school district. And then she stopped all of that and went into school psychology. So I'm going to introduce you by email if you don't mind. Just wanted to make that connection. But it's just so interesting. And then when you just said now that you had two other schoolmates at Southern, it's just, to me, it's this interesting intersection, and it's interesting anyways.
Specifically in California, there are two other PhD level school psychs who went to law school. One, he's like a huge special education attorney in San Francisco or LA.
About him. She said it.
I went to a few of his sessions when I was a school psych. They had special ed conferences in Nashville, and he came a couple of times. I never got a chance to talk to him to pick his brain because I wasn't interested in law school at the time, but wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think she mentioned him too because I was just blown away by how I met you and then I met her. And it's just so interesting to put so much hard work into the degree and the bar exam, and then to want more with a psychology degree, and then there's an exam. I guess it's not on the level of a bar exam, but there is an exam. So
in the license exam, I took that one twice because that one was all multiple choice. And I think you and I talked about my fear of multiple choice exams, but the difference between that one and the bar was I was the only person in my cohort to fail the licensure exam because I went to a great program. So it wasn't like we weren't prepared to answer those questions. But again, I just at the time really struggled with multiple choice. She was dyslexic, so she just talked me through everything, and she said, okay, you're not stupid, you're a very competent psych, we know you can do this. Because the difference in the two exams, I think the bar exam is really based on memorization, and a lot of times as attorneys we don't really use the information that we're tested on, or at least in my opinion as a transactional attorney. But with school psychology, those questions actually correlated to things that you definitely needed to know to be in the field, like the basics. So by me failing that exam the first time, I just felt like an idiot. But like I said, that one professor, Dr. Amy Holt, she really took me under her wing because we took the exam before graduation. So I still had another semester to pass the exam before going into my psychology internship. And I passed it on the second try because, like I said, she really worked with me and gave me different tips and strategies for certain questions that she knew I knew the answer to, but I would get tripped up because of the way that the question was worded or my anxiety with multiple choice. So failing the bar exam the first time was a similar feeling, but it was a little different too.
So which attempt number was it for this time that you passed in Tennessee then?
So I took Texas twice because I had a job offer as a big law associate in Dallas, Texas. So the firm required me to take the Texas bar. And then my attorney mentor suggested that since I had no ties to Dallas whatsoever, outside of that job, I didn't want want to stay in Dallas, she suggested, you're from Alabama, but your second home is really Tennessee. They have the same cut score, 270. So why don't you just try your shot in Tennessee as a first time taker on your third attempt and see how you do? So I took Tennessee on my third attempt, but on registration, they classified me as a first time taker, which is interesting because some states don't do that. They'll ask you how many attempts have you made on the UBE, but Tennessee is generous in that you would be considered a first time taker. So yeah, I took it 3 times this July 2020, and I got results back the day after my birthday, actually.
Yes, I remember you letting me know that it was your birthday. So happy belated. Let's see. So what were the differences then from Texas and Tennessee, the bar exam taking experience? Besides Tennessee being your second home, I just want to point out the differences. And you no longer having ties in Texas, was there an atmosphere difference? Was there like the amount of people, like those kinds of...
Definitely. So Texas, like any other state that has a huge population, they give you the option to select your testing location, right? So even though I lived in Dallas, or I had planned to move to Dallas, I should say, I registered for the Austin location, thinking that Austin would be a little bit more compact, a little bit more small, but it wasn't. In July, I was completely overwhelmed with the number of people there. So the Austin location, we were all in a convention center. There had to have been at least 500 to 1,000 people in that large room. February was the exact same. The only difference is in February, the bar examiners don't give you a choice. Everyone goes to Austin, Texas. So we had it at a bigger convention center because, like I said, all of the test takers from Texas come to Austin for that test. So it was even more overwhelming than Tennessee. On the other hand, they also gave you the option of a testing site, but it's a smaller population of test takers. I took it in Memphis. For whatever reason, I did not want to drive to Nashville from Birmingham, the same distance, but I just said, let's go to Memphis. I don't know anybody in Memphis. So the Memphis location was extremely small in comparison to Texas, and it's extremely small in comparison to their Nashville population too. We had it in a small convention center, but all the test takers who didn't receive accommodations were in one room, and then the testing people who had accommodations were in a separate room. It had to have been less than 100 people at the Memphis location, which was better for me mentally. I was a little bit more relaxed. I wasn't as anxious. Sometimes what I've noticed about the bar, especially if you're a repeat taker or you're around repeat takers, everyone has their tactic of how to prepare for the exam on exam day, right? In Texas, in February, people were literally working out in the corner before they opened the doors. One girl was push-ups, other students had papers in their hand, just trying to remember certain tips and tricks for the essay portion. Whereas in Tennessee, I felt like most of the students were really relaxed. They all came from the same law school, the University of Memphis, and maybe some people from my law school, the University of Alabama. I think there were a few University of Tennessee grads there too, but the majority were from the University of Memphis. And they were all joking and just laughing about things that did not relate to the bar exam until they opened the door. So going into the exam mentally, I was in a better place than where I was the first 2 times.
Good. And just the sheer amount of people was just probably more relaxed, I think. And even the proctors are probably more relaxed. But you're residing in Alabama, right? And you are in Alabama now.
I'm in Alabama right now, so I figure out next steps.
Did you ever consider taking it in Alabama since it's a UBE? And then if you scored over 270, then you could do whatever you want from there, since that would be really close for you.
But I knew mentally it wouldn't be the best thing for me to take it in Alabama because I graduated last year. All of my law school friends would take this cycle. I didn't want people to know that I didn't hit a 260 on Texas exam. That was embarrassing for me. And so I just said, rather than sit for Alabama and run into my old law professors and, like I said, some people that I even mentored in law school, let's just go to another 270 state, even though the cut score is higher because Alabama, like you said, is a 260. Let's just take the leap of faith and go to another 270 state and work your butt off and see what happens. But I did have a friend who she failed Texas twice. She also transferred from Southern to a top law school on the West Coast. She actually failed the New Mexico bar as a third time taker like me. So she and I, we were planning this out, and I told her, I said, why don't you just retake Texas because your parents have a firm in Texas. You don't have to go to a different state like me. And she said, no, I think I'll try to go to a state with a lower cut score. That's a 260. And then just work from my parents' New Mexico office because they have a personal injury boutique. I remember during the summer telling my parents, maybe I should have picked a 260 state. Maybe too big of a reach because nerves start to kick in. You start to do practice sets, and every day is not the same. Some days you're good, some days you're okay, some days you're really struggling. She got her results back a month before I did. I remember getting her text and I thought, holy crap, how did she just fail in a 260 state again? She and I were always so good with the written portion in Texas. It was just that multiple choice piece that stumped us. For her, she said that her multiple choice went up, but her written was a bit murky, especially for the MPTs, and they ended up giving her a 257. She was devastated. I had another friend that I met via LinkedIn, same situation. He took it in a different state that he thought would be easier, and he failed. So when October came around, I was a bit nervous because I didn't know what would happen in my situation. I went to a state with the exact same cut score, and these people went to a state with lower cut scores, and they still failed. So the manner in which I found out that I passed the bar exam was literally the best moment of my life thus far. So yeah, that's ultimately why I chose not to take it in Alabama.
What was your lowest point in bar prep? And the first 2 times that you didn't make it in Texas, did you ever consider giving up?
Yeah. So the interesting part is the first 2 times I was very motivated, right? Because I made it to one of the top law firms in the country, right? It's a top 30 firm on the American Lawyer 100 list. People go to Ivy League law schools to get to that firm. And I didn't go to an Ivy League law school. I went to a top 30 law school, but they still picked me to be an associate. So the first time that I failed, yes, I was embarrassed, but everyone at the firm was so positive that really motivated me to get things in gear to study again, right? So the first time mentally I was fine. I was just worried about work-life balance. Like, how do I continue to get work but also tell people politely, I have to study, don't send me work emails after 4. So I was worried about fostering good relationships with people, but also keeping track with my study schedule. The second time I failed, so April, that's when I started to have more of the mental issues, because I don't know if I told you this, but I got sick the weekend before bar results came out. I had really bad vertigo randomly. I was so dizzy I couldn't walk to the front door. I don't know what happened. I just woke up one day super dizzy. I went to the hospital, they sent me home. And then I went to the hospital the day that bar results were released because I got dizzier. And then I opened the results and I saw my score, you failed. And I didn't even care at that point. I said, you know what? I failed the bar. I can't focus my eyes right now. I need to go back to the hospital, not knowing that they would keep me a week for neurological evaluations. But then after I got released from the hospital, the law firm ultimately let me go. They have a policy in big law where you have 2 attempts to pass the bar. If you don't pass on your second attempt, each firm is different in how they release you. My firm required me to resign. So they did it the nice way. HR scheduled a meeting with me probably the first week of May to just let me know, hey, tell us what day would you like for your payroll period to end. So that day was May the 10th, and that was when everything finally hit me. And I'm not a crier. I don't really cry much. But that day I just cried because I thought, not only am I sick, but I just failed the bar. I lost my job, a perfect job with a 6-figure salary that most people would kill for. And I didn't lose it because of my work ability. I lost it because I couldn't take a stupid test. The hiring partner called me because he's also a minority. So he was really just trying to keep my spirits lifted, because this was the first time that the Dallas office has had to let an associate go from the bar. So he didn't want that negativity to get to me in any way. In that moment, on that day, I was just down and I didn't want to pick up a book to study. I didn't want to do anything. But this entire summer was filled with doctor appointments and physical therapy. And on top of that, my uncle, who was my favorite person in the world, his cancer was in remission, but then he started having complications that required him to have multiple surgeries. So he was on his deathbed in July. And so there were days where I would be studying, but mentally I wasn't quite there, because I would be thinking like, okay, did the surgery go well? Or they're saying he may die for July weekend. I need to go to the hospital. Ironically, his wife is also a repeat taker. So she was studying for the Alabama bar at the same time while he was going through all this. He didn't die in the summer. He actually made 100% improvement, but he died after the second week of August after another surgery surgery complication. So this summer was just filled with a lot of anxiety around the exam because I knew for me it wouldn't benefit me to wait to February 25. Yeah, I had physical therapy and doctor's appointments, but those were scheduled throughout the summer. So I said, if you don't have anything else to do, why not just get it done? You're healthy, you had a minor health setback, it's nothing malignant that you need long-term care for. You don't have a choice now but to retake the bar. Even though some of the law professors and big law partners in my circle were telling me otherwise. Because to some people, especially in big law, when you fail after your second attempt. The first attempt, everyone is really nice in big law, I think. On your second attempt, people start to question you. Not necessarily your ability level, but they start to think, what is Crystal doing wrong? She must have test anxiety. Or you must be super nervous when you hit the facility. Or maybe you weren't feeling well on test day. They start to come up with all these reasons for why you didn't pass instead of just saying, well, it wasn't Crystal's time to pass the bar, right? Like she'll work hard, study again, and move on next time. Even though all of these people were telling me to focus on my mental health, rest, take the bar in February 25. Like I said, I knew myself and I knew that even though there were days where I was just really depressed, I wasn't depressed to the point where it was really interfering with my day to day. It was just little blocks of the day where I would feel sorry for myself, but I was able to pick up and move on. I didn't necessarily perseverate on that. So I'll say like this past cycle was the lowest of my bar prep journey, only because like I said, I had health issues and then family members who were sick. But thankfully, I received a score high enough to pass, not only in Tennessee, but even other jurisdictions. That's a silver lining in all of it.
Yes, but there was never, I'm going to hang up the towel. And that's great.
No, and people ask that all the time. And that has never crossed my mind, only because I know someone who finished law school 12 years ago and they have yet to pass the Alabama bar and they're working as a paralegal right now, which is fine. But for me, I'm a very driven person. If I set my mind to something, I'm going to do it. Even though I was embarrassed to fail, I was embarrassed to lose my job, I just constantly reminded myself like, okay, you need to figure out what works best for you as it pertains to your study habits so that you won't repeat what happened in February. Even though I worked really hard in February, I had a tutor. I had two tutors actually, one for the MPT and one for the MBE. So it wasn't the same story that most people say, oh, I bought Barbary again or I bought Themis again. I didn't do any of that. I just worked with a tutor and used the study methods that they recommended. And this time around, I said, you're a school psych, Crystal. You draft academic plans, behavior plans for students all the time. So why not draft an academic plan for yourself and make it fit for you? So that's exactly what I did. To some people, my study schedule may have been extreme, meaning I didn't use a bar course this time. I literally on my calendar used my pen and paper and said, okay, this week I'll study this, that week. And I also incorporated spaced repetition. I used your bar drills program as well. This time it was all what works best for Crystal versus, okay, let me work with this tutor and follow whatever method they want me to follow.
So your MBEs this time, since that was your kryptonite, improving it this time was the spaced repetition, the bar exam drills, and just doing what you, because no one knows really what's going to work for you but you.
Right.
That's the theme. So those were the key things that you said that helped you?
Yeah, and with the schedule to add to that, the MBE was my weakest. So I sat down once I finally got over being fired from work and I was mentally ready to map out a plan. I thought about my bar scores over the past two administrations and I noticed my written was always above a 135. 135 is average, but my MBEs were all 115 or 120. And so I said, let's look at your essays. My MBE essay related topics were always lower grading wise than the essay only. So my wheels started to spin and I said, Crystal, this is not how most people recommend you study for the bar, but I'm going to do it. So I spent the majority of my summer studying for the MBE. I wanted to know those subjects cold like the back of my hand. The essay only topics, I always made 5s and 6s on those essays, but I had never received a 5 or a 6 on a topic that was double tested, which was very odd to me, right? So the first 7 weeks, I studied strictly the MBE subjects. like to study in chunks, and I always recommend to parents sometimes if a student has an issue with a subject that you break it down into many chunks, and once you master one subpart A, you go to subpart B. So I did the same thing, except I used the NCBE outline for the MBE. I didn't use their MEE outline because they don't cover everything on that, but the MBE, I said, okay, I've seen a lot of these topics before on the MBE, even though most people say they're not highly tested. February, they pulled a lot of tricks on the MBE and tested things that aren't necessarily in the top highly tested items on the MBE. For each sub that the examiners had on the outline, I just blocked it off to a specific day, right? For contracts, part A was contract formation. So Monday was my contract formation day. Tuesday was my contract defenses day, and so on. So what that looked like was in the morning, I would wake up, work out, review the material that I needed to review for contract formation because I wasn't starting from scratch. So I didn't need to watch a lecture or anything like that, but I had a contract formation outline. So I would review that, make sure I understood everything. Then I used UWorld. Since I had your program, I only did 17 UWorld questions per day because I didn't want to get overwhelmed because they're the same questions. But I wanted to do UWorld because I could do the individual subtopics to make sure I wasn't lacking in my understanding of contract formation. Then take a lunch break. Essays, I only did 2 a day this time around. The first 2 times I did 4 a day because people told me that's what I needed to do. But this time I wanted to focus on the quantity versus the quality. I only did 2 essays a day. Same thing with the multiple choice questions overall. I think the first time I took the bar, I did 1,000 questions. The second time, I almost did 1,000 questions because people told me, oh, you're bad at the MBE. You need to do more. That didn't work. So this time, wasn't necessarily focused on the amount. I just wanted to make sure my accuracy was still going up. At times, I would move slowly through bar exam drills. If I went through a level, and eventually I started to move faster through the program because my accuracy started to get a little better. But I thought, I'm going to make him so angry. He wants me to go. I think that's part of the reason why your program was so effective for me, because I wasn't focused on, oh, I want to hit level 6 before I sit for the bar. If I did level 6, that's great. For me, I wanted to make sure I actually mastered everything at 90% without questioning things before sitting for the bar. So I think that really helped because my MBE improved by 15 points. Like I got a 130, which to most people is, but for me, that's great. From 115 to 135, that's freaking amazing for me. So I was so excited to see my score because like I said, multiple choice was the biggest barrier for me in this bar exam.
Okay, good. For explaining all of that and shouting out the program. I do appreciate it. So results then, how did you deal with that? Like all the different times you can let us know. You did have that experience with your friends in Alabama. I do remember you saying that. So is there any other methods or techniques to deal with the stress?
Yeah. So the first 2 times, I never set aside time for myself. If you're done with your to-do list for today, do more memorization. So I would make up something to do until 11 o'clock and then go to sleep. This time, I had a cutoff time. My active practice was between about 8 and 5 because I wasn't working. And then after 5 p.m., I took a dinner break, did a quick workout if I didn't do my workout that morning. And then I knew for me, I needed to incorporate at least an hour worth of memorization every day, which the first 2 attempts, I didn't do that. The time I took the bar, I didn't memorize at all. I just went in with a general understanding of everything because people told me you don't have to memorize for the bar. But this time around, I said, I think for me, I do need to carve in a memorization block because that's part of my issue with the MBE. I'm not recalling the nuances of the rule well enough to answer the question correctly or even to think through the question correctly. So like I said, I would do dinner after 5, workout maybe after 6, but I always said from 7 to 9, that would be my memorization period or teach period where I would teach my imaginary class the material. And then after 9 o'clock, I was done. I don't care if I didn't feel like I could move on to something else tomorrow. It didn't matter. I just told myself you have to be done by 9 or 9:30 so that you can be in the bed relaxed and then go to sleep after about an hour or so. So I think my recommendation for people would be to make sure you carve out time for yourself and your mental health. It sounds silly. It sounds cliche, but I think people fear the bar exam to the point now where they think if you spend more time during the day on bar material, that'll equate to a passing score. And that's not necessarily true. Like I said, I didn't study as much this time as I did the first two times. The first time I did the standard 10 weeks. This time I did about 9 weeks. But like I said, within those 9 weeks, there were certain days where I just wasn't mentally feeling it. So I would cut things short here or there. I didn't do that many multiple choice questions this time. So if you know that you're exhausted for the day, there's nothing wrong with cutting your day off at 6 for the sake of recuperating and gaining your mental energy and then starting fresh the next day. And the other thing that I want to mention too is something that I mentioned to a recent law student who failed the Texas bar. Barbary, Themis, Kaplan, all those bar programs are great, right? Even though I failed using Barbary the first time, I've never said anything bad about Barbary or any of the other programs because I feel like research-wise, I can't say Barbary is not an effective program. But what I can say is to students, if you should use a bar course, don't get in the habit of just checking boxes, right? Meaning if Barbary or Themis or whoever, if they have a to-do list for that day, don't sit there and say, okay, I'm going to get items 1 through 10 done today. Because that doesn't translate necessarily to a passing score unless those things are really moving the needle for you. So for example, for me, I knew the Barbary lectures weren't working for me the first time. I'm not an auditory learner. My friends know that if I nod my head so many times while you're talking to me, I'm not listening to you. And that's something I'm starting to work on as an adult because I said, oh, if they've picked up on it, then I need to come up with another coping mechanism. But there were days where those lectures were 4 hours long and I watched them because that's what my law professors told us to do, or that's what the attorneys at my firm said. I followed Barbary to the T, and if you follow Barbary to the T, you will pass. And I'm using Barbary, but plug in the name of any program. But if I could rewind the time, if I had a program like bar exam drills last year, in addition to a bar course, I would say, okay, the bar course is giving me items 1 through 10 today. Let me look at the list and see which one will actually move the needle for me and help me get to the passing score I need. And when I say move the needle, I'm mainly referring to something that works for your learning style. So if you see read an outline for 2 hours on your study schedule, but reading an outline will not help you, don't read the outline. For those 2 hours, do bar exam drills or do active review with your flashcards for 2 hours or write out rule statements for 2 hours and then do bar exam drills or UWorld or whatever program you decided to use. I think sometimes students naturally just get in the habit of focusing on, I want to complete 90% of this program, or I want to complete 100% of this program. And at the end of the day, those percentages don't really matter. I know people who did 60% of a bar course and passed because they did pick and choose what items on that daily schedule were the most helpful for them and made the rest of their study schedule for that day work for them. So that's my biggest takeaway for people, is that regardless of if you're using a bar prep course, a supplement, whatever, just be very intentional about the things that you use during your study time. And if it's not working for you, reevaluate. I used to reevaluate things at the end of every week. If I saw where my percentages on bar exam drills or UWorld was really struggling on a particular subject, then I was scheduled to do something new tomorrow. I would incorporate the subject that I was just struggling with from yesterday into that study schedule for the next day. Just constantly reevaluate and assess to see, am I doing right now? Is that really helping me? And if not, maybe I need to make some tweaks, because what I've found too, just from talking to different people who failed this past summer, a lot of people wait until after the bar course gives them like a simulated exam at the end of June or early July to make that tweak. And to me, that's too late because you only got 3 weeks left to study for the bar and to really pick up the pace on a few things. But it's so much easier to reevaluate at the start of bar prep and do it every week versus letting that anxiety from a simulated exam push you over to making changes.
Next thing then is a more fun thing. How did you discover that you passed the bar?
So this was pretty hilarious. Just to give a bit of a backstory, I signed up for this diversity program nationwide that pairs students up with an attorney mentor. And I guess they select your mentor based off of the state that you're taking the bar and your practice area of interest. They paired me with her because she was an attorney in Austin. Never met this lady a day in my life at that point, but we formed a relationship over the past year. I guess to go back to your question about people being negative about my bar results, I wouldn't say she was overly negative, but she was not very positive when I told her how good I felt after the July bar. So like after the MBE or when the bar exam ended, I sent her a text. I said, hey, can you call me? And she called me and I told her, I said, oh, I finished the MBE like 5 minutes early for each portion this time. Like the questions were still difficult for the second session, but I was able to reason through them well enough.
Time you've ever done that.
I was so excited. I literally felt good. But I just remember she called me back and we had a chat. And she said, I don't want you to get too excited because that doesn't mean anything. She said, let's wait and get your score. And hopefully you have a score where you at least qualify for a 260 state like Alabama. And you can at least work in one state. That's my goal. I just want you to work in one state. And I remember thinking to myself, that's not a good response.
All right,
I'm so excited and you're not giving me the same level of excitement back. Plus, you're acting as if I won't hit it. So I'm saying that to say the day that bar results came out, I got a phone call from her and I was headed to Nashville for my alma mater. They were having homecoming activities. So I was in the shuttle with my sorority sisters and I looked over at my sorority sister and I said, my mentor is calling me. I'm not planning on picking up because I think this is bad news because the previous time when the February results were released, she called me the next day to see how I was doing. So part of me felt like if she's calling me, there has to be a reason. Tennessee is different in that they don't send an email with your letter first. They post the pass list first and then they'll send the email later, probably after 3. And like I said, I knew we were going to homecoming activities. I knew the list was going to be posted before 10, but I didn't want to ruin my day. I didn't even tell my sorority sisters that I retook the bar. I didn't tell, because some of them are attorneys. I didn't tell them that bar results were released today. I didn't tell anybody but my mom, but I told myself when I woke up, I said, do not look at Google, do not look at Reddit, don't look at anything until 6 o'clock tonight when you get back to your hotel room. So like I said, when she called me at 9, my heart jumped because I thought, holy crap, I failed the bar again. But it was a little voice inside me that told me to answer it, right? I didn't answer it. I ended up calling her back. So she tells me, she says, hey, like, happy birthday. I know your birthday was yesterday. And I'm thinking, why are you calling me 24 hours after my birthday? This is so weird.
And this is a Friday, right?
Hey,
I emailed you on Saturday.
you did. But I thought this is so strange for her because she could just text me happy birthday. Why are you calling me? So I let her finish. And I think she could hear like the hesitancy in my voice because she said, your middle name is Nicole, correct? And I told her, I said, yeah. And she was like, okay, I just wanted to make sure because I don't know of another Crystal Nicole Armstrong in the state of Tennessee. I see that you passed the bar exam. And I said, what are you talking about?
Nice.
She said, oh my gosh, let me sing the pass list. So she texted to me. And like I said, she's in Texas. So I didn't tell her or any of my other Texas friends when Tennessee results were released. So she told me, she said, I had the date saved in my phone for months because she actually looked at the Board of Law Examiners website for the state of Tennessee because they released that date early. I think when I registered, it was already in the manual that results would be released October the 11th. So I was shocked that she did that months in advance without me telling her. But she said she set her alarm for 8:30, 9 o'clock because she wanted to see if my name would be on the list. To her surprise, my name was on the list. I'm grateful that she did call to tell me because it made the rest of my day run a bit more smooth. I wasn't as anxious. I wasn't as on edge. But at the same time, I thought, I wonder if she really checked the list because she thought my name wouldn't be on the list. That doesn't even matter. My name was on the list and I didn't have to wait until 6 p.m. to figure out whether or not I passed because she called me.
Congratulations. What it all comes down to is you did it, and you did it spectacularly. I wasn't even sure if you sat for Texas or Tennessee. For me, it was like you were deciding, and then I was like, okay, wherever she sits, 270, it'll work out. And then, so Tennessee comes out Friday. I think Texas came out Wednesday or Thursday or maybe Tuesday. I can't remember, but it was like a big thing for me. I had a lot of people sitting for Texas, and then I come off that emotional roller coaster of Texas, and then I gotta check Tennessee, and I see Crystal and Armstrong. Did it say Nicole? I can't remember, but
it said Nicole.
And then that, from my end, that's how I viewed it, and I was very happy. Saturday night, you did it.
Everything worked out the way it was supposed to. I posted a brief synopsis of my bar prep journey on LinkedIn, and a lot of people shared it and reposted it. And I'm glad I did because I had different law students from Texas reaching out to me who failed this past July. This week I've been in text messages sharing my thoughts on what they could do, or on the phone trying to help them through this difficult time. Whether you fail the bar the first time or the 5th time, it never feels good. It's even more lonely when you don't have people who really understand what you're going through. So that's really why I posted my story to LinkedIn. just to be a resource for people who need it.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing your journey, your thoughts on the bar exam and how to get through it. I'm sure it's helping so many people, which we all appreciate. You touched on some negative feelings, but do you have a particular way to handle that, especially from people you love and you respect and you care about? Is there any kind of thoughts on how to deal with negativity?
My family members weren't really negative per se, but for my family member who has retaken the bar at least 10 times, they just had a lot of questions. So I mastered the idea of not oversharing. So when people would say, Crystal, what happened with the bar? Of course, I would be honest and say that I needed to retake it, but that's all I shared. I didn't say when results would be released. I didn't say how I was spending my study time. I didn't give them any additional information for them to have additional conversations with me to stress me out. So I'll say one thing that I found helpful was to make sure you keep certain things private. If it helps you to not share when bar results will be released, do that to minimize the stress after you're done. Because I did find the first time I took the bar, I didn't know exactly when Texas results would be released, but I knew they would be before my birthday. And so people would constantly call me like, oh, like your birthday is in 5 days. Has bar results come out? No. So this time, outside of my mom, I didn't tell anybody when bar results would be released. And then two, I was very careful about who I consulted with on days where I needed to vent. So you can't talk to everybody, right? Because some people just don't really understand. So I just used a select group of my village, whether it be my constitutional law professor from Alabama Law, because he's absolutely amazing. He was a great person to vent to. I couldn't vent to my uncle because he was sick, but my mom was a good source of frustration, even though I think I stressed her out. She did her best to be there to sit and listen and not have any feedback, but just be a sounding board to me through this process. So I think I had maybe 2 to 3 people that I really used as my sounding board. And outside of that, no one knew anything else that was going on in Crystal's world. When I would go out to church on Sundays, people would ask, oh, how are you doing? Great. I didn't say anything about studying for the bar. I didn't say anything about anything. I'm great. Life is great. I'm just taking things one day at a time and move on.
I love it. Do you have any final thoughts or words or anything? I know you've been sharing a lot now on LinkedIn, but is there anything you want to say?
Anybody who's preparing for the bar, whether you're a first time taker or a repeat taker, I just want you to remember that the bar only measures your performance on that particular day. It's not an accurate reflection of your abilities as a future attorney. If you should fail, that doesn't mean that you did something extremely bad. And it definitely doesn't mean that you're not competent to be an attorney. When you're studying for the bar, just take things one day at a time. Do not freak out on days where an assessment or a practice set doesn't go your way. Use those days as leverage to figure out, okay, I struggle with this, but how can I move the needle to get to the percentage or accuracy level that I want? It's so important to take care of your mental health. So just take things one day at a time. If you need a break, take a break. If you need to take one day a week off, take one day a week off. I think this time in the summer, I took Sundays off intentionally because I needed it. Whereas the first 2 times, I didn't take any days off. No one told me not to take days off, but it was just something within myself where I didn't feel comfortable taking days off for whatever reason. But I do think taking Sundays as like a breather was helpful for me. And as it got closer to the bar, that anxiety creeps in. So it's hard to sit for a full day without doing anything bar related. So on those days when I would leave church, if I had to do something, I would just pick up a flashcard set. And then after that or hour and a half was up, I moved on. I worked with my brother on some of the things that he was working on. I spent time with family. So just really make sure you take at least a day or at least 4 hours to yourself once a week just to reset and move on to the next round of bar prep each week, because it definitely helps. It won't hinder you at all. It only helps you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So what are you going to do now that you've passed the bar? I know we delayed this interview a little bit because you had job interviews. So are you going to do the big law again, or are you going to do...
So now I am doing interviews in different sectors. So law firms, the government, I have one for the Court of Appeals. I won't say which circuit. And I'm casting a wide net because as a junior lawyer with less than 3 years work experience, it's hard to find a job. Not really now, but anytime, right? Because you're still fairly junior. So what I didn't want transitioning from passing the bar was limit myself to certain jobs or certain law firms. I think when I graduated from law school, I was only focused on big law, right? It was like big law or nothing else. And so having been in big law for about 8 to 9 months, like I like big law. I don't mind going back at some point in the future. But right now, as a junior, I don't know where that would be, whether it be a small firm, mid-sized firm, government, but wherever I land, I want it to be a place that really fosters my development and a team that actually cares about my development versus trying to find a large firm that's prestigious in nature. Because none of that really matters, at the end of the day. But yeah, I am in the middle of interviews now, round 2 of certain interviews. So I can't say if they will give me an offer yet, but it's to be determined. So I will land somewhere. I'm not limiting myself to Tennessee either. Like I said, the staff attorney position for the Court of Appeals is in a different circuit. So I may need to relocate if I should decide to take that one. But so far, it may be somewhere in the Southeast, Alabama, Georgia, or Tennessee for right now.
Very nice. Best wishes with all of that, definitely. And I'm excited to see what your future brings because I know it's going to be great.
I'm excited too. And I get sworn in on Tuesday, which is also election day. But yes, I will be sworn in on Tuesday. So I'm super excited about that.
Would you mind if we put your email?
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully anybody who has questions or wants, you could continue through the email like you've been doing on LinkedIn. Probably say that too. You might get a bunch of LinkedIn requests to connect, I'm sure, including me.
Add me and I will definitely add you back.
Thank you so much for doing this. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, you're welcome. Like I said, I'm here to help. I want people to get over the hump of taking the bar exam, and I want people to realize that it's not as scary as it seems, but it is something that's doable and you can get it done just like I did.